It's the end of the strain. It's the joy in your heart. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Jazz for Peace podcast, where the final solution is love. And we are here with Hosein Kouros-Mehr. We're going to find out a lot of things about him. There's so many things of interest with regards to, he's an author, a physician, scientist. He spent over 2 decades in cancer research, drug development. So there's a lot of things going on. But, off camera, we talked about something he's really into now, and it's something that I know all of you, and it just seems the world is interested in, and that is raising our consciousness, raising ourselves to a higher level. It's kind of like the big wake up or whatever that we're involved in, and I love it because I think it gives our entire species the opportunity to play a role in the future of our planet, our world, our problems, address our problems. So I'm anything related to what Hosein's going to be talking about is exciting for me, and so I assume is going to be very exciting for you as well. So let's bring Hosein on. I'm just going to ask him a simple start out question, and that is based on his book. What does he mean by default mode? So Hosein, welcome to the Jazz for Peace podcast. And what do you mean by your default mode?
Thanks, Rick, for having me on. Really love what you're doing. And to answer your question, it's a fancy term, but it's something you probably know very well. The default mode network is your wandering mind. So anytime your mind wanders away from the present, maybe takes you to the past, to an old conversation, something that happened yesterday or 20 years ago, or it has you thinking about the future, that's actually a part of your brain that turns on. It's called the default mode network. And a lot of times it stands in the way of that awakening, that spiritual awakening that you talked about earlier. So this is a very big discovery, and science is now recognizing and understanding how the brain works, and it's just a huge game changer. So this book that I wrote, Breakthrough, Master Your Default Mode and Thrive, is about the default mode network and how to understand it, learn about it, and how to have it work for you and not against you.
That would be a really big game changer, because I hear about it all the time, and I experience it. We all experience this. We kind of default to certain situations. Some people default to traumatic experiences. And, so you can get into this incredible enlightening situation. And then, some time goes by, maybe you go to sleep, and then you wake up defaulting back into something that could be ruminating, things like that. So yeah, tell us about how you address this, because it would help so many people who are even working hard at getting out of that. They're trying to get out of that box they're in, and even they're doing a good job, but it's almost like a rubber band. It kind of like pulls them back. They get like boink, and they get pulled back to it. It's a constant move of doing that. I mean, even myself, because I try to be aware of all these things, sometimes I find myself defaulting back to something where I'm like, wait a minute, I am happy for the situation that happened, because if that didn't happen, then this couldn't have happened, and that couldn't have happened. But because that which happened caused me, difficulty and pain and trauma, I have an issue with what happened when I really shouldn't, because I know darn well I wouldn't trade it. In other words, I wouldn't trade that terrible thing that happened, yet I'm defaulting back into the, difficulty of it, or you could wish ill will on somebody even. I mean, it's crazy. It's a crazy thing. And I am aware of it. So I'm just excited for you to talk about this.
Yeah, exactly. So the first thing is don't beat yourself up for having a brain that ruminates, that's constantly going back into the past. It is normal. Don't get angry at yourself. The key is to understand, why is this happening? Why is it that every other animal out there, they are fully present, they're living in the moment. But for some reason, the human brain has this tendency of going back into the past, revisiting old memories. Well, what the default mode network is trying to do when it takes you back to the past, it is trying to help you. It is trying to help you process memories. It is trying to help you make decisions. That's the intention it has. But unfortunately, a lot of times it becomes overactive, and we find ourselves going back to the past, revisiting old trauma that we never resolved. And it can lead to problems like addiction, depression, anxiety. Right. So I think the first step in this process of self-discovery is really understanding your default mode. Why is it going back into the past, and how can I silence it? So what I'm doing in this book is I'm breaking it down into 11 different knots. Okay, I don't call them disorders, syndrome, diseases. I call them knots, like knots in a rope. Might be firmly stuck in place, but you could untie that knot, and that string, that rope goes back to being its original shape. So these 11 knots, things like stress, emotional pain, anxiety, these are reversible. And the default mode network has its hand in these. So for each of these, I've got a remedy and ways of silencing this default mode network. It turns out there are ways to quiet this monkey mind, this wandering mind. And it involves things that are, age old, spiritual practices, mindfulness, different types of exercises, focus exercises, breathing exercises. And it turns out a lot of things at the heart of spiritual practice actually shut down the default mode. Things like forgiveness, compassion, empathy, restraint. So a lot of these qualities at the heart of spirituality, turns out, can quiet the default mode network, can allow your mind to heal. The mind will heal itself. It's a self-healing miracle. You just have to give it the tools to allow it to heal. So this book is about healing, about help, and that healing starts with self-understanding and understanding how this default mode network works. What happens when you're able to break through to the higher state? And what is that higher state? Well, it turns out the brain has another network. It's called central executive. That's the network that's on when you're present, when you're in the flow state, when you're here and now. The mental chatter is off. And maybe, Rick, you can demonstrate what it's like to be here and now in the flow state. But when you're here and now, it's a different part of your brain that's on. It's the central executive network. And when you spend more time in that state, you'll find that life has a lot more color, that music sounds a lot better because the mental chatter is off, and you could be fully present. So this book basically helps you with this age-old process of self-discovery, but now the science is now here. The medicine is now here, taking a seat at the table with spirituality, with mental health. And it's now a whole new dimension added to this age-old journey of self-discovery, basically.
Well, now, are you saying that animals don't have this problem? Like that rabbit is not worried about a scolding that his mother gave him 3 months ago.
That's right. Yeah,
That's
I mean,
incredible.
animals are born and they're ready to survive, right? I mean, you look at most species, they're born and they start walking, they're independent right away. But humans are very different. We're born completely dependent for about a year. And so life for us is a lot more difficult. And I think that's why this default mode network evolved in us as a survival mechanism. Long time ago, we lived in jungles and caves, and life was really difficult. And the way we got through it is by having this crazy mind that focuses on the negative, with negativity bias, has us always thinking about the past and what is the worst thing that happened to me yesterday. That's how we survived. And today, we don't really need that monkey mind anymore. We may need it sometimes, but now it gets in the way most of the time. And I think now it's a time, you mentioned it earlier, of evolving, moving past that old monkey mind to our higher selves and awakening. And I think this is what the science is even leading us to, basically.
Wow, that's fascinating because I play music here and I have a balcony over here. I'm in New York City, and birds come and they listen to the music. They even listen to me playing on these podcasts, and they'll listen and they'll hang out, and then they'll start making love, and then sometimes they'll lay eggs on the balcony. And so I just have to deal with it, and I just let them do their thing. And I'll notice the bird will just watch peer off the balcony. The little baby bird will look, and I can tell the only thing he's thinking about is like that moment that he's going to fly. That seems to me. And the mother's bringing him this stuff, and I'm thinking, wow, this is such a different a whole nother thing. I mean, we're in all of these kinds of different thought processes and different times and different time zones, and thinking about the future and the past and the present. And these birds just don't, and then one day the chick just takes off, and
Hmm.
then they're gone until it repeats itself, whenever that may be.
Wow.
But with the arts and culture, you get a chance to go into this of the moment zone. You get a chance to kind of make a connection with probably a higher power. Music gets to come through you. I mean, all the practicing that you're doing is basically just creating a giant menu for, anything to happen. So, I mean, what I could do now is I could kind of demonstrate this live of where I'm going to just do this, and then you can kind of analyze it and say how it relates to, because actually when you make music and you improvise, you do go into a default, but it's so much of a better default than the other possibilities out there, unless of course maybe you're swimming, you go into a default to do that, you go into a default to ski, or something like that, a certain type of thing. So these certain defaults are of a higher level than your basic default, where you don't really know what's going to happen. You could end up thinking great things with your imagination, or you could be pulled into a vortex. But let's give it a try right now. So what I do is I take a song that brings some familiarity to the equation, and then I just go, and wherever I go, it's related to the moment, it's related to the time, it's related to the space. It could be anything that's going on in the world. And so the flavor of the moment is really a Brazilian song right now. It's called "The Waters of March." It comes from Brazil, and I'll do a little bit of that in kind of a special arrangement, and then I'll go off into I don't know where. We don't know. And then let's see what Hosein has to say about it. A stick, a stone, it's the end of the road. It's the rest of a stump. It's a little alone. It's a sliver of glass. It is life, it's the sun. It is night, it is death. It's a trap, it's a gun. The oak when it blooms, a fox in the brush, a knot in the wood, song of a thrush, the wood of the wind, a cliff, a fall, a scratch, a lump. It is nothing at all, it's the wind blowing free. It's the end of the slope. It's a beam, it's a void, it's a hunch, it's a hope. And the riverbank talks of the waters of March. It's the end of the strain, it's the joy in your heart.
Wow. Wow. Rick, that was incredible. That, I mean, that is the flow state.
Wow, cool.
You are in the flow state. I mean, that is being in the zone, right? During the entire time you were playing, my mental chatter was off. My default mode network was off. Essentially, we were fully present in the zone, in the flow state, and the network in our brain that was on, it's called central executive network. It's the observing mind that is fully present. That's the same part of the mind that Buddhist monks use when they meditate, right? When spiritual people are connecting with God.
Wow.
That is the flow state.
Now, this is so cool because, you know, I know it's something. That's why I go there. I go to this place, you know, and I know I'm going to a place where I am getting such a reward, and I'm giving such a reward. You know, I'm in a very special place, and I know all that, but I've never had someone actually communicate it, and I wouldn't know how to communicate it, and I don't know if anyone would believe me. So it's so great to hear you actually communicating your observation.
So that being in that state, that is the cure for anxiety.
Wow.
That is the cure for depression. Because what you've done is you've shut off all of that mental chatter from that other crazy part of the mind, that default mode network, the monkey mind. That part of the mind is completely off when you're in the flow state. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people out there, let's say people with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder,
right?
People who just came back from war. They have a really hard time being present. And some of those people may have a hard time even paying attention to your song because their default mode is so active, they have a hard time being present. But I think we're now starting to understand this. It's incredible. I think music, I have a chapter on anxiety in the book, and one of the solutions is music. Exactly what you did, I think, can help a lot of people. And we're all very different. Some of us are more auditory, and I am. And so music for me quiets that monkey mind. And there are a lot of other people who that'll help. So what you're doing is actually therapy.
You know, you're so right. And it's so great to hear, you know, you actually voicing, you know, your observations, because people look at Jazz for Peace testimonials from our events, you know, and they put on their events and they're great and they have chandeliers and they have this and they have that and they have blah, blah, blah. And then they look at the testimonials from our events and they're like, this is crazy the way that people are talking. It sounds too good to be true. We had to put a page up, jazzforpeace.org/too-good-to-be-true.pdf. And I invite anyone to go to it and just read what we had to put for these people, because there were so many of them. Because you know what it was? They were removing everything you're describing. They were removing it from the event. You know what I mean? And then they're trying to replace it with what? What are you going to replace that with? I don't know. That's why we have Jazz for Peace, because there is no replacement for this kind of thing. And people we have videos where people in Ghana, Africa, talk about the healing that they felt with this, you know, talking about it. And so that's why, you know, we come back to America and we're supposed to be more civilized over here. And yet people are just don't, you know, they don't seem to get what you're explaining and what I was, you know, able to demonstrate and get your explanation. So, you know, to hopefully to get them watch this, because you can't really remove certain things from the equation. And here's the problem. We've done that with so many things because we're in an ism.
Yeah,
So the ism that we chose, and capitalism is, okay, if it's not selling a beer, remove it. You know what I mean?
yeah,
If it's
exactly.
not selling a
Well,
product.
what I would say is not everyone out there is looking for healing. Most
Yeah,
people out there are looking for money.
right.
So you're not going to stop that. But
Mm.
there is always a small percentage of people out there looking for healing. And those are the people that you and I are helping.
Well, and the bottom line is, a lot of the people, that the more they look for money, the more healing they end up needing.
Yeah, that's true. Very true.
And then you
Ultimately,
see them over at Big Sur spending like $15,000 a week to try to get healed from that.
that's right. I think, I, for one, my mission is to help people out there looking for help.
Right.
And I'm trying, I'm not doing this for money. I'm really doing this to help people, because I find I am most happiest when two things happen. One, when I'm fully present in this moment, and two, when I have an intention to help somebody. When I have those two things, I'm happy.
The bottom line is, I mean, this is, no matter how you slice it, I've never met anyone that could make an argument against it. That is, that spiritual health comes first. You know what I mean? So you've got to get that wealth, wealth and health, but spiritual wealth, really. Once you get that, then the more money you can make, the better. But
Definitely.
you cannot buy the spiritual health with the money. So you can't fill the hole. And you're going to see people like this guy at Boeing, who testified that he makes $33.8 million a
What a
year
shame.
to basically break the planes. So because it's a scam thing. If you're making $2 million a month, I mean, his lights aren't going to be shut off until the year 33,000, So the bottom line is, you can't fill up the other whole, the wealth. The inner wealth, you can't buy it, and you can't fill it with any amount of money.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And integrity is a hallmark of all religions, and that's critically needed for happiness. And that Boeing CEO was a good example that when you lose that integrity, look what ends up happening.
Right,
So
because there's no end to what you will do, because the ship has no rudder on it anymore.
that's
So
right.
there's nothing holding you back from anything, really.
That's right.
And you
So
just go to the next, to the next.
that's right. Now, what stands in the way of integrity? What stands in the way of that spiritual health that you talked about? It is this ego of ours, this crazy monkey mind,
Mm.
which is called the default mode network. It stands in the way. So there's certain times in the day where your wandering mind switches on. For me, it's when I brush my teeth in the mornings. Every morning, as soon as I start brushing my teeth, this wandering mind turns on, and I've started observing, like, what are the types of thoughts that actually turn on when that monkey mind switches on. They're all very self-obsessed thoughts, very selfish thoughts.
Right.
And it's this crazy monkey mind of ours. But here's the thing: when you observe yourself and you recognize, you can get out of that state. And that process of really self-understanding, self-discovery can completely change your life. And so this book helps you with that. There are many other books that can help you with that. The point is that there are things that stand in the way of our spiritual health. Once we recognize them, we can break through and start to find that inner happiness.
It would be great if we could just get some of these people that have more money than they'll ever be able to spend to now just cross over and start gaining spiritual, get that other quotient, and it'll stop them from kind of, self-destructive behavior of chasing more money when they can't even spend the money they have. But on another interesting thing that happened recently was this shooting. And just yesterday, they interview these school kids, and the school kids said that the kid, that shooter in that presidential, the Trump thing, that shooter was bullied unmercifully at school. Now, two things. One was, I was on a podcast the other day, and I said something that surprised me. I said, I would not trade I wouldn't trade that salary to play a note worse. I would love to have as much as they'll give me at my best, at what I'm, but I wouldn't sacrifice a single note. And then I thought to myself, am I out of my mind? I'm got to be crazy. But the bottom line is, I really wouldn't, because I have to feel like I gave you and this show whatever it is that a higher power. So I can't sacrifice even a penny, not a penny, nothing. There's nothing I can give up for that. You know what I mean? So no
Absolutely.
matter how much you offer me, how about 37 million? How about 3 million a month? I can't. I just wouldn't do it. It's just not. It's out of the question. So these are the things that you're talking about. But the other one with the school shooting was a situation where I told a story of where we helped a person whose son had been bullied. It was a mother. There was no infrastructure for her, so she started her own. She started her own program for bullying, and we went and helped her. And me, you'd think I would be at least the somewhat of the smartest guy in the room, but I went out there to do what we're programmed to do: raise as much money as you can. You know, that's going to mean how successful it is. Get as many sponsors as you can. These are all things that Chesapeake does, and by the way, people do love it. Get sponsors, reward, reward their reward the people that are on board with her board members, make them VIP guests of honor at the event. Do this, do that, new and prestigious supporters. Donate an instrument to the school. I brought an instrument in the carry-on. And I still didn't feel like I got, grand slam home runs because she was such a new organization. She was literally on life support. Yeah. There's the kid sitting in front of us watching. I literally felt bad for the kids. Maybe I didn't. I get back to New York and a letter comes, and that letter has nothing to do with sponsors. It has nothing to do with funds raised. It has nothing to do with new and prestigious support. It had nothing to do with all the things I was trying to provide. It had to do with the transformation of the child who at one point was, suicidal because of the bullying, to now can't believe that someone will fly this was in Los Angeles, by the way, where you are. This event was in Los Angeles. I used musicians from Freddie Hubbard's band, because Freddie Hubbard's a great jazz player who used to live in Los Angeles. We did with all 9 yards, but nevertheless, I come all the way back to New York, and I ended up hitting a grand slam home run because the kid was transformed. Not that we struck out in the other areas, but isn't it all only about the kid? And that's where music and the arts comes in. And that's where what you're saying comes in. This, mastering your default mode is going to help the individual, not necessarily.
That's right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we have all these things that we treat people. Go ahead.
Yeah. I have very, very similar experiences. Academically, I have all these accomplishments, blah, blah, blah. But what I'm most proud of is the one email I got from someone saying that this book I had written really changed their life. When you really help one person out there, that is more fulfilling than all the money and accolades and whatever else. So, and that's ultimately who we are as humans, right? We are compassionate as human beings, and we are meant to help one another. And when we do, we feel fulfilled. And the guy who's making 30 million doesn't feel fulfilled because that's not who we are. We weren't put here to make a bunch of dollar bills. That's why we are unfulfilled with that and think we need more money to feel fulfilled. Actually, we're caught in the trap of addictive craving. But when you help somebody else, you feel fulfilled because that's who we are as human beings. Loneliness, the part about bullying, loneliness is actually one of those knots in the book. I mentioned there's 11 knots. Loneliness is one of them. Big problem, cause of bullying. Default mode network has its hand in it big time, but it is reversible. And the way you reverse loneliness is by cultivating compassion. Compassion is the antidote for it. When you're stuck in that lonely state, compassion seems disgusting. Why would I be compassionate? But if you're stuck in that lonely state, try a little bit of compassion, fostering that compassion. You will find it will reverse loneliness. You can completely reverse loneliness, get yourself out of it. So that's a big problem right now.
When I was a kid, I used to go into the state that we all witnessed here and that you so elaborately talked about when I was a kid. But I knew it's like, man, it's 7:00. All my friends are at so-and-so. I got to get over to this party. You know what I mean? But I was like, whoa, I wonder if I'm going to experience anything with my friends that's going to be, I went over there and I didn't, or I did sometimes. I mean, if I met a girl or something, it was incredible. But if I just ended up with 4, stupid draft beers in me and, a bunch of chatter. But anyway, the bottom line was, this kind of thing that you're talking about, people need to get into that zone, whether they use meditation, whether they use, and anybody can do it with music. I would love to see people just, getting an instrument and just sitting down with it and trying to find that magical space, because that's a beautiful thing. And not only that, it draws, the world starts revolving around you when you, well, all of a sudden, because when you get in that zone, it seems like the world's revolving around you, instead of you trying to get in the clique and wishing that, and you being outcast and getting all upset about that. So it kind of reverses things, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what I put in the book is, do a little experiment. Okay. Give yourself 5 minutes. Start off by just observing yourself. Take a look inside. How do you feel? What's your mood? Whatever it is, spend 5 minutes listening to music, or doing some mindfulness, or praying, or whatever it is. And then after 5 minutes, look again inside and see what has changed. Has anything changed? And see for yourself. Compare different things, and you'll find 5 minutes of being in that flow state with music can completely change your mood. But don't take my word for it. Give it a try, and whatever works for you, do more of it, and do it multiple times a day. Shut off that monkey mind and allow your mind to heal. So, and this book gives you all of the tools. Music is front and center, but there are all the tools are in here, including medications, including even things like plant medicines, a little controversial.
Black medicines, you said?
Plant medicines.
What are they?
Well, so this is a little controversial, and this is not legal. This is really the cutting edge. But it turns out there are plants out there, like there's a cactus, there's a mushroom, where they can create a spiritual experience by shutting off the default mode network. That's actually how they work. I'm sure you're familiar with like psilocybin, and
that's what comes to mind. Yeah, peyote.
Peyote. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now, they do shut off the default mode, but they have a lot of side effects.
Ayahuasca,
exactly. How those plant medicines work is by shutting off the default mode network, shutting off the monkey mind.
Okay.
That's how they allow the healing to take place. But they do some other things in the brain, like connecting different parts of the brain that don't normally connect. And so you get all these crazy side effects. And that's why they're not legal, right? So in medicine now, we're trying to understand what is the medical value here. And it looks like there is some medical value. And some of these will be approved for patients in the next year or two. So they are coming. But right now, they're not legal.
Yeah. Well, I think they're not legal because we haven't really studied the indigenous people and how they use them, because I've done concerts in Mexico and people would take me out to these people. And I met somebody once, and he told me that who was going out there and he was basically going out there to the pyramids, and he was going to take the whatever the thing was that they have there, the psilocybin or whatever they were going to give him, and the natives were going to give him. And he said he's shown up 3 times, and the guy said, "You're not right with yourself. You're not ready. I can't. He sends them back. So he has to be. They assess you, and then sometimes he'll show up unannounced, and the guy will say, "You weren't you supposed to be here yesterday?" And the guy's like, So they have these weird things that they kind of sense them coming, but you have to be, in other words, they have a protocol that they know, and so you have to be right with yourself, and these people somehow can look at you and tell if you are in a mental state of mind to.
That's right. If you're very, very egoic, and you take that, let's say psilocybin, in that state of egoism, you're going to have a catastrophic experience. Right. It is going to be catastrophic. So you have to be in a state where you're ready to surrender, ready to submit. A lot of times they say you cannot drink or eat meat for 2 weeks going into the event. So your body is ready for that surrender. Then you're ready for the experience. But if you go into it not in the right mindset, it will be a horrible experience.
And also with specific expectations. Yeah.
That's right.
Now, before we stop, I just can't help but ask, because of your name. It's a great name. Where is it from?
Persian. So yeah, Persian. I was born in Iran, and it's a Persian name. So Rumi, I don't know if you know Rumi, the poet, but I kind of my mom is Sufi, sort of that religion of Rumi, and so It's a Persian name.
Interesting, because just so you know, I was once asked to write the lyrics for a classic jazz standard by a man named Billy Strayhorn, who was Duke Ellington's, kind of like his like writing partner. In fact, a lot of the things attributed to Duke Ellington were written by Billy Strayhorn. He wrote these classic things, but Billy Strayhorn wrote an instrumental piece called Isfahan, and that city is in Iran, right?
That's right.
So I was asked to write the lyrics, and I had to look up all this information about Isfahan, and it's phenomenal. So, this is just between me and you, but go check, and maybe I think the listeners out here would be very interested. I think you can go to YouTube, put Rick DellaRatta Isfahan. You will hear a performance of this amazing composition by Billy Strayhorn, and you will hear, my interpretation of it, but you'll also hear the lyrics that I wrote to it. And if you listen to those lyrics, you'll see what a phenomenal history Isfahan has, and why I feel so disappointed that we can't get right with this, because Isfahan, I would love to visit there. I'd love to just know more about the history and all of the information. It's incredible. Now, Hosein, where can people, find out more about you? Where can they get the book? I would assume Amazon, but, go ahead and
Sure. My website is yourdefaultmode.com. Just one word, yourdefaultmode.com. And the book is there. You can start reading it for free. My other 2 books are also there. My social media handles are at the bottom of the page there. And the audiobook just came out last week. So the audiobook, you can find it on Audible. You can find it on Amazon. Send me an email. I'm happy to send you a link for a free trial, 2-month free trial. But yeah, I would love to connect. And thank you, Rick, for all you do. I really appreciate it. It's very important work.
My pleasure, and we hope that Hosein will stay in touch with Jazz for Peace, be a part of our family, our community. Again, folks, that book, I believe, is called Breakthrough, Master Your Default Mode, and Thrive. Check out this book. Check out his concepts. He is, it's almost a fractal. There's so many people that are on this higher plane of enlightenment and empowerment, and Hosein is on it. So stick with us here at Jazz for Peace. Hosein, thank you so much for joining us. And remember, folks, the final solution is love.
That was awesome. That was awesome.